Oh no. Hello and welcome to OpenRelay Screenside Chats episode 12. Today we're going to be talking about the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit. So what you see before you, you can find at widgets.openrelay.xyz. Today I am not presenting from slides.openrelay.xyz. That's where you can find the slides I'm usually going over. But today we're going to take a look at the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit's website. So the OpenRelay Toolkit's website is an interactive documentation site. And this website was built from the ground up by myself and by Greg Lang. It is about the extent of our web design capabilities. So you will see that there are a lot of things that could be improved, and we would welcome those enhancements from anybody in the community who would like to make them. If you watched last week's OpenRelay Screenside Chat, you heard about the fort tokens, and if somebody wanted to come through and make this pretty, there would definitely be some fort tokens in it for you. Anyway, this website, and we're going to go both through interacting with the website, but then we'll get down into how it's built, and go through some of the underlying things that make it work. So this is the home page. You get redirected here when you go to widgets.openrelay.xyz. You'll see that the documentation is versioned, and we are on the latest version of the documentation. So it gives you a general introduction. The toolkit is built off of Lit Element, which is a really cool framework for building components that are embeddable into other people's websites. And then we will dive into installation. So we have a prepared bundle of the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit that you can get just by embedding this little snippet into your web page. So you'll see here that the snippet is versioned with the last Git tag that we made. Actually the specific Git commit. So this is one release past the version, or one Git commit past the version 0.1.0 tag. I had to make a last minute release to the toolkit before, or to the documentation before doing this presentation. So that's why we are not on a specific tag. But the toolkit is the same. It's just the documentation's changed a little bit. So yeah, if you embed this, it will be hosted through our CDN. We use Amazon CloudFront to deliver stuff. It has the HTTP or the HTML sub-resource integrity string. So if this ever got changed out from under you, the browser would reject it. And even if we wanted to, we couldn't go change this content on you. So once you embed it, you're reasonably safe. And then, but the prepared bundle that we have is about 250 kilobytes minified and gzipped. We would recommend in general that if you're only using some of the widgets, you use Webpack to go ahead and build your own bundle that just includes the widgets that you're going to use. And maybe someday we'll do what jQuery UI does and have a nice little web page where you can select the subcomponents that you want, and we'll build the bundle for you and serve it to you. But as of right now, if you want a smaller build, you're going to have to build it yourself with Webpack. All of our subcomponents are installable with Yarn, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. So in the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit, the first thing that you need to know about is our Web3 layer. So Web3 is, in general, an extension to normal browser functionality that enables a browser to interact with the Ethereum blockchain. So if you are operating on a desktop, you probably would have MetaMask installed in order to interact with Web3. If you're operating from a mobile device, then you may be using something like Status or Cypher or Toshi. There's a variety of mobile Web3 browsers. But at the application layer, we need to have a way to interface with Web3 and deal with the fact that some people have it and some people don't. So in the HTML, and this is a full runnable HTTP or HTML page. It's not very complicated, but it's there. Within the body of your application, you would start with an OR Web3 tag. So anything that you want to just be in your application that depends on Web3 is going to go in here. You're going to have one set of code that gets displayed when Web3 is available and properly configured. And so this is going to presumably be much more than one line of HTML. It's going to be the bulk of your web application is going to go in this section here. And then you can have another section for when your users do not have Web3 available. So in this case, we just have a fairly simple link telling them to go install MetaMask. But you could make this as complex of instructions as you like in order to give your users, direct your user to a Web3 browser. Now, if the user has Web3 but has it locked, then the locked slot from the Web3 tag will display and let the user, and here you can display for your user instructions on how to unlock their Web3 client. And then you'll note down here, we've specified that the two supported networks are network 1 and network 42. So that is mainnet and Kovan for Ethereum networks. Kovan is an Ethereum test network. And so if those are the two networks that we support, and if the user were connected to, say, Ropsten, which I believe is network number 3, then this net unsupported slot would display. And again, just like the section up here, the no Web3 section, the locked section, and the net unsupported section can all be arbitrarily complex HTML to display as much as or as little as you want to your user. Now, if you completely omit those extra slots, the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit ships with some standard language on instructions for your users just to give them some idea what's going on. It really is our intention that each application would implement these and give the user much more detailed instructions. But we do have details there just mainly for in the development process. If something's not, we want it to give the developer useful information before they've gotten as far as implementing those features. So moving on to the next section, we have a bit about JavaScript integrations, talking about some of the things that all of our widgets have and some common patterns for how you might integrate with this with our widgets if you were writing a complex JavaScript application as opposed to just embedding HTML. We talk about our affiliates program, which you can see. We had several screenside chat episodes about our affiliate program, but the gist of it is that if you go to affiliates.openrelay.xyz, submit a transaction to our sign-up contract, you will get an affiliate address. If you put that affiliate address into the fee recipient attribute of the OR SRA tag from the OpenRelay Widget Toolkit, and then any orders that get created through implementations of your website that include that attribute in that tag, those orders will include your affiliate address as the fee recipient on the order, and as a result, you will get paid 80% of the fees for orders generated by your site. The last thing we have in our introductory section of the website is talking about our contributors program. So we have identified 4 groups of tickets, and if you click on these links, it'll take you to the lists of tickets on GitHub that you could help contribute on. And for those of you who do make contributions, we would be happy to reward you with fort tokens. So the fort program is essentially, and I talked about this on a previous Screenside chat as well, but the fort program is essentially its own affiliate that is made up of OpenRelay's open source contributors. And so as you make contributions to OpenRelay and any of our surrounding components, you would get fort tokens, and those fort tokens entitle you to a share of the affiliate fees that are collected through, for example, this website. If orders get created through widgets.openrelay.xyz, 80% of those fees go to the fort program, and fort token holders are entitled to their share of those fees. Before we move on to the specific widget documentation, does anybody have any questions? All right. So moving on, I want to point out, as I mentioned, I built this whole, well, Greg and I built this whole site from scratch. We have these fancy previous and next buttons, as well as a drop down. You'll see how all of this gets populated in the latter half of the video. But here we get to the widgets. It takes us to the first widget page from the widget category. So here, again, this talks about the OR Web3 tag that I talked about a minute ago. You can install it with yarn add @OpenRelay/Web3 element. Each of our widget pages will have some documentation. It'll have HTML, the rendered version of the HTML, and this is actually the exact rendered version of this exact HTML. That literally in the where we write the documentation, we write it once and it gets displayed here and rendered here. Then we have a description section where we write about the specifics of the tag so that you can get details on how to use it. Here we talk about connecting to Web3 clients. We talk about the HTML attributes that you can add. Starting actually tomorrow, EIP 1102 is going live on November 2nd, 1102. And that will introduce a privacy mode to MetaMask. If a user has privacy mode enabled, a web app cannot see the details of their Web3 client until they call web3.currentprovider.enable to present the user with a pop-up asking them to approve this site as to see their Web3 details. By default, the Web3 tag will call that currentprovider.enable automatically. But if you wanted to say present that to the user with a button, you could add the manual enable attribute to the OR Web3 tag, and then it would be up to your application to call that currentprovider.enable to explain to the user what's about to happen before that pop-up shows up in front of them. Here we also talk about the JavaScript events that are emitted and captured by this tag. So incoming events are things that this tag listens for. Outgoing events are tags that this outgoing events are events that this tag emits. Anybody have any questions about the Web3 tag? Before I move on to the next element, I want to point out this Fork Me on GitHub ribbon in the upper right-hand corner. This is actually different for every single page. So if we click on that and we follow it, that will take us to the specific Web3 element on GitHub. And you'll see here that the README that is embedded here is actually the same content as the documentation that we were just on. It does not include the rendering of the HTML because, oddly enough, GitHub does not allow you to render arbitrary JavaScript on their website. Yeah, anyway, every page that we'll look at will have this Fork Me on GitHub ribbon, and that ribbon takes you to the code for that specific element on each page. So the next element that we're going to take a quick look at is the Web3 account widget. So here you can see all you have to do is put the OR Web3 account tag in there. You can install it with this yarn command. If you want to build your own bundle of it, that's where you can find it. And then it just renders the address that you're currently coming from. Not a whole lot to this element, but it makes for a nice, simple little example of how things work. Next, we get into signature, and this is the first element that we have that has JavaScript in addition to the HTML. So here we have the HTML on this side, the JavaScript on this side. And again, this exact HTML and this exact JavaScript are embedded up here. You can see here that we are signing the raw message hello world. So if I click on that, MetaMask is going to pop up and ask me to approve that. I'm going to go ahead and click sign. And then we see the signature across here. That is because the sign button emitted a sign event over here, which this JavaScript caught and injected the signature into a span that we had prepared here. The signing format uses the 0x signing protocol. So 0x version 2 specifies several different potential signature types. There's version 3 if it's a prefixed ETH signature, 0.2 if it is not a prefixed ETH signature. Depending on what your client is, it will either come out as 0.3 or 0.2 depending on whether or not your Web3 client prefixes the message. 0.2 is really intended for EIP 712 signatures. At the time that I wrote the sign button, EIP 712 was not out yet. It is available now, and so sometime soon I hope to update the sign button to support EIP 712 properly. Essentially, you can, with the sign button, the attributes it takes are either message or raw message. So message is presumed to be a 32-byte hash of the actual message that you want it to sign. Raw message can be an arbitrary string that it will apply the keccak256 hashing function to before it signs it. Essentially, raw message will calculate message for you. Then it fires a sign event when the user successfully signs a message. If the user rejects the signature request, then it will emit an error also on the sign event, and that will the difference will be event.detail.signature versus event.detail.error. Any questions about the signing button? Okay. Making sure you guys are still there. Okay. So next we have the token select widget. And here we actually have some HTML and CSS and JavaScript. The CSS is mostly just there so that we could show what it would look like if we put some CSS into one of these pages. But here we have the token select box, which knows about a whole bunch of different Ethereum tokens. So you will take a look at Embiggen, and here the select box, the tokens. Looking here in the JavaScript, We pull the token select box out of the DOM, and then the token select .value is an object that gives us a symbol, it gives us the number of decimals, and it gives us the contract address. So, and when the user selects a token out of the drop-down list, it emits a change event. So essentially what we have here is when a user changes this content, it will fire an event which will automatically update those spans with the symbol, the decimals, and the address. So if I scroll through here, you can see that as I hit the down button on my keyboard, all of that information pops up pretty much immediately. Again, we have some installation instructions. It's a fairly simple tag. All you need to do is drop in the OR token select tag. We've given it an ID just so that our JavaScript can find it easily. And then in addition to being able to provide it with no attributes, you can also give it with a token list URL. So in that case, instead of using its standard set of tokens, you could give it a URL where it could download a list of tokens. You can also specify a selected index. So from a list of, given its list of indexes or list of tokens, if you want it to have one pre-selected, you can specify it by the number. I would note that you should not rely on indexes to remain the same when the JavaScript library is updated. So you might use selected index, within your application, but you would not want to hard code a specific number, because as we add new tokens that the drop-down list knows about, indexes will move around all over the place because we're sorting them alphabetically by symbol. If you want to embed, hard code in your application a specific item to be pre-selected by the drop-down, you can specify that by the symbol, and we will make sure that we select the symbol that you specified. And then again, these objects have a JavaScript property called value, which contains the symbol, decimal, and address attributes that correspond to the token. And they have a change event that gets emitted when the user selects a token. ERC20 balance. So this shows you the balance of a particular ERC20 token. You can specify, in the tag, you can specify the address of the token that you want to display, how many decimals you want to round it to. By default, it will refresh the balance every time a new block comes out, just to make sure to see if your balance has changed. So if your balance changes, by default, the ERC20 balance widget will update that almost immediately. You can also specify an alternative account. So if you want to display the balances for something other than the currently logged in account, you can specify the account as an attribute, and it will use that instead of the currently logged in user. The value for the value property for this element is a big number, and there is also a promise attached to it that will resolve after the token's balance has been retrieved from the blockchain for the first time. It does not re-resolve the promise every time the balance updates with the block. That's just there in case you have some part of a JavaScript application that wants to react to the fact that this balance is now available. So now we have the SRA element, which is SRA is short for Standard Relayer API. This is how you can engage with specific implementations of the Standard Relayer API. So by default, if you did not include any attributes in here, the Standard Relayer API is going to be OpenRelay, and the fee recipient is going to be the fork token's affiliate contract address. But we've displayed it here just to show that you can, in fact, change what Standard Relayer API implementation you're pointed to and what fee recipient you're using. This would be used in place of the OR Web3 tag, for anything that needs any of our widgets that need information about the standard Relayer API. So for example, if we want to enable trading of a particular token on 0x, we have the enable token button. So here, it's as simple as plugging it in and specifying the token address that you want to enable trading on. If we look down here, we see that we can also specify an alternative operator address. So by default, it will set it for the 0x exchange contract to trade whatever token is specified there. It is also possible to use this same button to enable other operators. So for example, at fling.openrelay.xyz, we have a tool that allows you to send tokens to multiple addresses at the same time. In order to do that, you have to enable the Fling contract to send those tokens on your behalf. This widget didn't exist when we built Fling, but if it had, we would have just embedded this token or this widget with the Fling contract address listed as the operator address. And then when you click it, nothing happens. When you click it, if it were working correctly, MetaMask would prompt you to sign a message approving trading of this token through the 0x exchange. I wonder why that's not working. I'll have to look into that. So we also have the fee widget. So this allows you to specify how much of the fee you want the maker and the taker to pay for a given order. So we have a slider here that starts at whatever the relayer here said is the fee that needs to be paid. So if you can slide this all the way to the other end and make the taker pay the whole fee, you can slide it back and have the maker pay the whole fee. This is up to the maker to decide. You know, you could go halfway in the middle and split it 50-50. Really, you can put it wherever you like. And that will designate whether the maker or the taker is going to pay most of the fee. This fee selection widget really only makes sense for OpenRelay because most, if not all, of the other relayers that charge fees are prescriptive that the maker has to pay X and the taker has to pay Y. With OpenRelay, we say the total fee has to be a certain amount. Right now, it's set at 0.2 ZRX, and then that can be split between the maker and taker however they see fit. You can also specify as an attribute the total fee. So if you want to exceed OpenRelay's minimum requirement, you are welcome to. You might want to do that because you're using your affiliate address as the fee recipient, and if you increase the total fee, then the fees you get as your share will be larger. I would just caution that if you're building a dApp and trying to set fees too high, then your users may decide to go somewhere else. I'm not going to go over all the details on this on each of the remaining widgets. I assume most of you can read and are familiar with how this works. So here is the order maker widget. So we can select a token, say the maker is going to offer not coin, which means you're not going to get anything for this token. And you see that the enable button has already popped up when we selected not coin, because not coin is always enabled for everybody. The fee is going to be paid in ZRX, and here we see my current ZRX balance on this account. We'll say that I'll go ahead and pay the fees. And we're going to trade not coin for some Embiggen, and I have 29.72 Embiggen, and I'm going to ask for 1 Embiggen for every not coin. I'm going to set an expiration date. We'll do today. I didn't want to do today. We'll do tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the morning. And this should be popping up a sign button for me, but it's not. So that's another bug that oh, wait. There we go. Now it's popping up a sign button for me, so I can sign that. MetaMask pops up, I sign it, and now that order has gone off to OpenRelay to be validated and added to the order book. So here we've specified that we only support networks 42 and network 1. Now it's decided that I have a balance of 0 Notcoin, which is utterly absurd because everybody has more than 1 Notcoin. So something must have come back wrong in a request somewhere. Again, there are lots of... I don't want to give the idea that the Widget Toolkit is a finished product. It is there. We are still working on it. There are bugs to be fixed. It's obviously not pretty yet. The main reason we are putting this out there is to help engage the community and hopefully find people who are happy to come help us with our documentation, help us make things pretty, help us with translations. But yeah, it looks again like we have tokens again. But anyway, as we move on, we can see here, this is a previous order that I have, actually this order may not actually exist. The SRA signed order widget is just a widget that displays information about an order for you. And it is intended for orders that come from a standard Relay or API implementation. However, it gets that information just through attributes embedded in it. Now, it's expected that these attributes will be retrieved from a relayer via JavaScript and populated automatically, but there's nothing that stops you from filling it in with order information that isn't necessarily even valid. So anyway, it just displays it like this. It would be very easy to implement a subclass of this tag's base class that will change the way it gets presented. So if you wanted to present other information, basically all you would have to do is subclass this and show the information that you want to display. And it would still take care of calculating price, showing available amounts, and stuff like that. Here we have a widget that actually allows you to fill an order. So we see that I have embiggen enabled, and this is our standard enable token. This is being looked up from OpenRelay based on its order hash. So this is an order where somebody has offered 10 embiggen per Notcoin, and they have 1 Notcoin available. So if you want to pay 10 embiggen, you can get 1 Notcoin, which is really not a very good deal, even though embiggen isn't worth anything. You'd have to pay gas to give up your embiggen and get nothing in exchange. But if you wanted to do that, you could hit this max button to go for that, and then you could hit submit. MetaMask will pop up asking, are you sure you want to do that? And of course you don't want to do that, so we're going to reject that. I don't know why this message is showing up twice, but oh, actually I do know why this message is showing up twice, and I probably need to fix that. But basically the OR SRA tag will display any errors that come up for you. This can be styled on an application by application basis. This is basically a list element with an error class tied to it. So if you wanted to style that and say stick it in the upper right hand corner for your website, you could. Or if you wanted to style that and make it look nicer for our website, that'd be cool too. When you submit the event, it will submit a Web3 transaction event in JavaScript, which I'm not going to fill this order because it would be a bad deal, and then this order would be gone and the documentation wouldn't have anything to refer to. But if I did fill this order, then the Ethereum transaction ID would show up in a list here, and it would link us to Etherscan so that you could go see the details of that transaction. Does anybody have questions about this element or any of the other elements that I have just kind of glossed over in the past few minutes since the last time I asked for questions?
Are you planning on building any tooling that will help out with figuring out the current going rate for tokens? So you had earlier the balance, the tool to help bring you in the balance for your current address and any tokens associated with that. What do you are you planning on doing anything to actually resolve what that will equal out to in a mean exchange pricing point?
Generally, OpenRelay tries to stay away from the question of price. Price is actually a really hard thing to determine accurately. So, you know, we can give you the price of Embiggen in this particular order, but determining market prices, particularly in the distributed exchange space, is harder than most people like to admit. You know, a lot of relayers and exchanges out there will say, you know, this is the current market price, but they're basing that off of information that I consider to be somewhat questionable. And for example, and I had a blog post about this a couple of weeks ago called "Gaslighting Dexes for Fun and Profit," where I showed that it is possible to fill 0x orders in association with relayers who would not have carried that 0x order. So I filled a bunch of Embiggen for Notcoin orders against 14 other relays other than OpenRelay. And if you looked at Etherscan or if you looked at 0xtracker.com, both of them attributed those orders to the relayers that I had just plugged in an address for, but none of them would have carried Embiggen for Notcoin orders. So in general, you know, OpenRelay will show you the orders that we have and the price that you can get for those orders. We try to stay away from making assertions about what the price of certain assets are. That's also part of the reason that we have flat fees and instead of trying to charge fees as a percentage of the tokens being traded. Because the 0x protocol requires fees to be paid in the ZRX token, we would have to be able to translate the value of the tokens being traded into the value of ZRX. And that's a question we largely want to avoid, but because it really is complicated to determine what prices ought to be. And really, if you are a professional trader, a lot of what you are trying to do is get a better grasp than the rest of the market of what the prices actually are. So, you know, we could go to, there are a number of web services out there that will give you pricing information for various tokens. We could go to, I think Etherscan will give us prices. CoinMarketCap will give us prices. We could use those prices and give you a widget that gave you pricing information. But just in general, that is a question we would rather avoid. You know, we might, if somebody else wanted to develop a widget that gave pricing information about certain tokens, you know, we might refer people to it. But we really kind of want to avoid being responsible for giving people pricing information when that's a really hard question and we doubt our ability to get it right. And to be clear here, we doubt other people's ability to get it right too. We just think other people aren't quite as you know, aware of how difficult of a problem it is. Does that answer your question?
That answers my loaded question, yes.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions? Okay. So here we have search results. So here you can select a maker token, and this is our token select element that we looked at earlier. That is going to, if you look over here at the JavaScript, for our search result element, that is going to change the maker asset address to the token address from the token select element. So here, but before we've selected anything, it's showing us basically the front page of results. So right now, OpenRelay has a grand total of 2 orders on the 0xv2 order book. Both of them are embiggen for Notcoin, both of them created by me on that previous page that we looked at a minute ago. But if we wanted to search for other token types, we could say there are no matching orders for ABT or AE or AFA. We can scroll down here. We want orders where the maker token is Notcoin. That means the maker is giving Notcoin. And we see that we have 2 orders, both priced at 1 embiggen per Notcoin. This first order has 10 not available, and this one has 1 not available. So if I click on these, we can actually see the order hashes. And so right now, we don't have the full capability to actually fill orders from the search results. That will be a feature that I hope to implement very soon. Right now, you can select these elements and get information about them from, that you can use in your JavaScript. If you look over here, as the result element, as I click on things, it's firing a change event that is clearing out this entire list of items and then iterating over all of the items, sticking in list items that include the hash of the order, and append those to the results so that you see what you see. And again, the search results element right here is actually very simple. You can insert it with just the OR SRA search result tag. The available HTML attributes are basically all of the things that you can search a standard Relayer API implementation on. So if you wanted to search for ERC20 tokens, you could put that in here. Or if you wanted to search for ERC721 tokens, you could put that in there. Taker asset address, exchange address, sender address, maker asset data, taker asset data. The trader asset data will search for either maker asset data or taker asset data. If you want to search by token address, you can search by that instead of the maker asset data. Fee recipient address. So if you were building a web application and you wanted to search for only orders that had been created by you, you could search for those that way. And then the value here is a list of the orders that were selected by the user, and we fire a change event when the user selects something. And our next button has gone gray, which means we are out of widgets to cycle through. So now I want to jump over to GitHub and talk about how this thing actually gets built. Have I not written a README for this one yet? Obviously I have, because we were just looking at it. But so we'll say, look at the SRA enable token. The readme.md for this page is actually a symlink to the documentation site folder. So if we go back up to widgets, docs, posts, here we can see all of the markdown content for all of the pages that we've just looked at. So if we go to the installation page, we can see that here. You'll see that we have placeholders here, so that automatically gets updated when we do a build. The site that we are using is built using Jekyll. So it is a static site. It's hosted in S3 with CloudFront in front of it. Yeah, we have markdown content from most of the site. We have the layout pages. So we have a widget page, post page, and then some default stuff that gives us our borders. When we compile the content, if we go back up to the deploy to prod.sh file here is going to run yarn update docs in the packages bundle folder. So if we go back up to widgets, packages, bundle, here in the package.json, we see an update docs script. So that's going to run npm run build node make release data. Then it's going to copy the widget bundle to the docs page, or to the docs folder, and the release.yaml to the docs/data folder. So if we look at make index, that is going to scan the packages folder for all of the available packages, and it is going to compile a bundle that it will then copy into the docs folder. That's how we get our bundle, and we should not have to update this bundle package very often because it just looks at the previous folder and then finds anything in there that has a package.json that it can include in the bundle that it's building. So we can add new widgets, just drop in a folder into this packages page, and the bundle package will pick it up automatically and include it in our big bundle. And then if we go back to our deploy prod, the next step is to run Jekyll build config with the branch config. And so we build one version with the branch config. So if we're building from master, it's going to call it latest, and otherwise it will deploy to the doc site with the branch folder and then with the tag name. And then because we're running in CloudFront, we clear the CloudFront distribution ID after we've done a deployment so that stuff doesn't get cached and we get a new version of the site. So yeah, this is a Jekyll site. It's all static. It interacts with OpenRelay on the back end. And I do want to point out here how quickly this reacts when we go to a new site. It's actually running the full request and updating that from OpenRelay every time it does that. So anyway, does anybody have any questions about the widget site or any of the widgets?
You mentioned earlier that you were looking at how to do something to make it look prettier.
Yes.